audience. This is the ninth edition of Urban Dialogue series. This is a webinar series organized by All India Institute of Local Self-Government and United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific and Urban Update magazine. In this webinar, we are trying to assess how resilient our cities are in time of this crisis and pandemic. We all know that cities are worst affected by this pandemic. If we see in India, you will find that majority of cases are from our big cities. Whether we talk about Mumbai, we talk about Delhi, these cities are in a race like Mumbai and Delhi. They don't want to win, but definitely people are suffering. And this pandemic has exposed the problems and the issues of our urban governance and planning. When we look at our cities, the most staggering thing is most of Indian cities, these environmental issues are very prominent. If we talk about Mumbai, then we see that city is been facing floods and sea level rise and other environmental related concerns. And if we talk about Delhi, then everyone knows that Delhi is one of the most polluted cities in the world. So we are joined by eminent panelists, journalists, academicians, researchers. First, I will introduce Ms. K. Acharya. She is, welcome ma'am, and she is an independent journalist and researcher with nearly 25 years of experience in writing on environment and development issues and has been published widely in international and Indian publications. Her research topics include forestry, renewable energy, rural development, climate change, solid waste management, ecotourism, and the list is very long. She is the president of the Forum of Environmental Journalists in India, through which she has been organizing and conducting several media training programs for journalists, media persons. She has also conducted media study tours in collaboration with International Federation of Environmental Journalists. Now, I would welcome Professor Harni Nagendra, Professor Sustainability in Ajim Premji University. Professor Nagendra is an ecologist and who uses methods from the natural and social sciences, satellite remote sensing, biodiversity studies, archival research, GIS, institutional analysis, and community interviews to examine the sustainability of forests and cities in the global south. Professor Nagendra has authored 2 books and over 150 peer-reviewed publications, including in Nature, Nature Sustainability and Science. She writes extensively on research for the public via newspaper and magazine articles, science blogs, and has given a number of public talks for science communication. Welcome, ma'am, to our webinar. We are also joined by Ms. Pratna Bora. She is India Director of Clean Air Asia, an environment sustainability strategist with more than 20 years of experience. Prior to joining Clean Air Asia, she has worked on the preparation of Government of India's policy documents for COP21 in Paris and for the negotiation of the SDGs by Government of India at United Nations. Earlier in her career, she has worked on preparation of People's Biodiversity Registers and in the National Declaration of held by the Convention on Biological Diversity. We are also joined by Professor Srinivas Murthy Rangaya. She is an IFS officer. He has been engaged in many government projects for conservation and for forest and other biodiversity issues. First of all, I would start with Ms. K. Acharya. She has been writing on environmental issues and she has been seeing what cities are facing in when we talk about any crisis. Even when there was no crisis, then also cities were facing many challenges. I would like to know, I will start with my first question. This pandemic has shown us that there are many positive sides of this pandemic if we talk about in terms of environment. We had seen our wildlife on streets, whether we talk about Indian cities or European cities, we have seen wildlife coming on streets. So have we taken the space of this wildlife or we have encroached upon, or there is some problem in our urban planning, and we were not able to balance development and environment. And I will start with you. What is your take on this?
I'm going to say, obviously, we have encroached. You don't need me to tell you that, we're in an incredible rate of rapid urbanization everywhere. But having said that, we're not going to be able to continue if we just sit in our homes, stop our cars, and leave it, and you think that nature has come back, the air pollution is lessened, or there's wildlife on our roads, or you can see the birds. Unfortunately, we can't do that. We have to be able to figure out how to balance it. That's the right word. And it's not been paid, I'm not going to say it's not been paid attention, it's not been taken seriously, which is why I think we are in the condition we are in. It's very complex why it's not been taken, but let's start with saying that we don't have the political will. We've never had it. What we have been able to see through COVID, even the ones who deny, any kind of climate change or any kind of environmental, even the ones who deny all that, will have to turn around and say, yes, pollution levels have dropped. It's obviously coming in the cities from our cars or our vehicular, emissions, etc. So basically, I think we now need to, I'm not going to say anything new. There have been sporadic attempts in cities, in Indian cities. I'm not going to talk about Western nations. I don't even want to discuss countries like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, etc. Leave them out. I'm talking about developing cities with Indian cities in mind, okay? There have been in various places, let's leave the tier 2 cities out, even if you take the metro cities, there have been sporadic attempts, renewable energy maybe. Then, for instance, in Delhi, whether it's wise or not is a different matter, but the attempt was there, alternate days for trying to curb traffic on the roads, etc. What we now need to do, I feel, okay, is to take these issues, get a broad-based panel of people to decide on the policies that need to be taken forward immediately. I, as a journalist, I'm going to tell you that if, we turn around and say we need a sea change and we need X and we need Y, it's not going to happen. But we have to start by putting these first steps forward. There are various ones, but for now, the answer is that.
Okay, ma'am, I think you also have a presentation. Are you going to show it now or maybe later?
I'll just speak on it and I'll send it later because I'm a little confused about how to put it on.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
All right, so
yeah.
Yeah, it's no big deal, Abhishek. I just want to say, okay? What I want to say is that, you don't need me to tell you that we are in, as I already said, rapid urbanization. If you listen to according to the UN, worldwide, we're 2.25 billion currently. We're expected to double by 30 years. That means by 2050. I suspect we'll be there way before that, but doesn't matter. Okay, so worldwide, but again, I'm going to say India first. All right, the challenges are in, and I'm going to talk basically only on, focus on environment. All right, for cities, what are our challenges? Air pollution, water pollution, waste management. That's terrible. Waste management, we've got housing problems, we've got infrastructure problems, we've got food security, health, education, livelihood, natural resources. These are what we had already. Okay, it's nothing new that has come. What has happened is now it's not even post-COVID, we're still in the middle of it, we're raging right now. Okay, these challenges that were there have, as you've already said, they've come into real stark focus. Like you said, okay, the environment looks much cleaner, the air looks cleaner, so that's a focus. As I said, unfortunately, we can't do that. We can't be sitting inside our homes and expect business to continue or expect us to be able to live. We're not going to be able to do that unless we get our economy back in shape. The thing is to get a balance. So let me just tell you take the basic environmental issues first, okay? Air pollution's all right. Like I said, levels have dropped significantly during lockdowns. They demonstrate even to deniers that vehicular emissions are one of our biggest culprits in cities. Okay. However, it's not that we can manage without transportation post-COVID. So the thing is, we have to figure out what to do, and not just figure out and keep it in files back in computers and in God knows where. But we have to learn, and we have to push, and we have to see that it's taken seriously by our policy administrators, and steps are taken to implement. Let's say it in steps. I'm not even going to say baby steps. We have to take steps now, simple. All right. It's the same with our water utilities. Right now, under COVID, they're facing financial stress, revenue loss. There's unavailability of critical materials. If there are pipes that are broken and it's leaking, they don't have. They're not able to sit and to repair it also if they want to. Okay? Investments have been deferred. And the same goes for power utilities also. Groundwater, the lack of monitoring has become acute. In cities like Bangalore, I'm talking from Bangalore right now, it's acute. Okay? Then there are other issues that are now not even going to be looked at. There are monsoonal runoffs, there are flooded streets. Mumbai is famous. The rest of us are also, 1 hour's heavy rain and we're in trouble everywhere. So it's not that it's not there. So to my mind, for environmental, much rather than look at biodiversity as such, because that's what I got told that I should be speaking on, I would like to pay attention to environment because it's linked, okay? You fix the air, you fix the water, your parks and your surrounding forests and your protected areas are still there. They will be there, okay? But inside our cities, we need to fix air, water, we need to fix. To me, the single biggest challenge right now is to fix our transport systems, whether it's public or whether it's private. There are a whole lot of initiatives, you don't need me to tell you, or the audience also, they don't need to tell you. There are a whole lot of systems that have been put forward. Okay, let's get into electric vehicles, let's have, which doesn't seem to work, but because there's no will. We've had in sporadic, one police commissioner put bike lanes, all right? And it worked fine till he was around there in the major arterial roads. It disappeared thereafter. This is what happens in this place. I cannot understand what we need to do, except for now, if you show COVID, if you show it in economic terms to all your policymakers, I think they'll just have to sit and listen that unless you do this, we are not going to be able to pick up. All right. So 4 or 5, you don't even need experts like me, but fine. Yeah, you take an entire broad base. I'm going to call it a sort of decentralization move that is needed to make policies now move forward. The first thing I think a government or your own local government should be doing is to sit together. Right. We know we need electric vehicles. What do we do? Ask the industry. What do you do about various lobbies that don't want to? Bring out an economic argument, and there are plenty right now. Bring out an economic argument, that they themselves will not be able to. So it needs that kind of will and push. It needs strong leaders. And I would ask all of you sitting here, all your specialists and our experts in your own fields, push for it, choose, amongst our politicians and our bureaucrats to push this policy to make sure it's implemented. Offer the help that's needed. We will cooperate in this part. This must move forward. So I think it needs very strong leadership. As I said, yeah, we have sporadic attempts. So how do we do it? That also I've said, bring all segments of people together. It has to be decentralized. For instance, if you're going to talk about traffic control, just leaving it to the cops, in my opinion, will not work. Okay? You need to bring the automotive industry in. You need to bring civil society leaders in. You need to bring pedestrians in. You need to bring private vehicle fellows in. You need to bring public utilities in. They must all speak together. You need to bring the water lot in, the BW, for me, it's the BWSSB. You need to bring the utilities in. Everybody needs to sit and talk and to figure out something. Okay, it will go this way. To me, I wish I could say that in Bangalore we will push, but I suspect we will. You know, I think some of us are, that's it, we've had enough. We might be able to push. I would like everybody in all the cities to say the same. Thanks very much. I think
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your insight on how we should respond to these environmental concerns, and we should sit together with policymakers, leaders, academicians, people, citizens especially. So I will go to Professor Murthy now, because I would like to know from his point of view, what are the challenges for the government when they are responding to environmental concerns, when they are working with urban local bodies, when they are working with private players. What are the major challenges they face when they are making policies, when they are implementing projects, programs, and schemes? Professor Murthy.
So, good morning, everybody. And then I would like to, the first point itself, confess that I am not a professor. Many people call me doctor, even I am not a compounder. That at that particular point, it's only a matlab, giving clarity about myself. That's one thing. Now, then, first of all, Madam has raised a very pertinent question. Do we have a political and bureaucratic vision for any issue? That is the first important issue. Without dwelling into the details, first of all, I would like to emphasize on one thing. We need to accept the problem. First of all, we should say, yes, there is a problem. Then if you accept the problem, then you would like to go for a solution. But the basic scenario, as on today, even I have seen almost more than 33 years of official life, professional life. So basically, many times we are in a denial mode. That's one thing. And then I would like to bring in one important issue for all the panelists and audience here. Were after putting on, say, efforts of more than 2 years, we, with help of UNDP and NBA, that is National Biodiversity Authority, brought out the document. Of course, it's in the final stages of publication. Completed the Madhya Pradesh State Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, which will be put on to the, we earlier was broadcasted it on our website for everybody's consideration, but not much of advisors came to us. So there we have dealt the urban issues in a very, what should I say, not completely, but yes, we have touched upon that. Now, coming to the issue, what is the scenario? And with respect to COVID, COVID is was to happen. The signals were there all around. When I say with somebody, why can't the governments take a decision putting a cap of population of any urban area? I'm going to give you one of my very, what should I say, troubled vision about it. Kumbh happens in India once in 12 years in different 4 places, and Allahabad Kumbh is known to be the one of the highest human densities around. That happens for a month or little more than a month. So just imagine the civic burden, civic administration burden that it suffers just to provide electricity, water, then sewage, disposal, everything together. But the situation is there in India, continuously onto Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, all other metropolities. These populations have become like mushrooms around, with so much of crores of people around. It's difficult to manage. That's one thing we should realize. Somewhere, if we need to have a decision, putting a cap on urbanization, and then what should I say, expansion of urban areas. That's one thing. Second thing, where is the answer? Why urban areas are getting developed, or why it is getting more densified? Because you are not attending to the rural self-sufficient issues, which was raised by Gandhi in the very long back when he was fighting against the British emperors. He said it is the मतलब ग्राम स्वराज की जरूरत है, तब जाके कोई बात बनेगा. So ग्रामों में मतलब we are unable to provide that self-sufficiency and employment. So everybody is running towards it. In Bhopal, people come what? Open a door at a given mall or make a server in a hotel, mall, restaurant. So these are the pretty, what should I say, employment that we are able to provide other than a bigger IT level employment. But that employment, even that minimal employment is not there. That's another important issue. Now, coming to where we have overlooked everything. For us, concrete development is the bigger development. Our GDP grows when we lay our concrete jungles around and when we lay our roads around. And laying concrete jungles and putting on roads, yes, it's a necessary. I don't say it's not a necessary, but to what extent? It has to be under the process of sustainable development issues. Already we have agreed with the Paris Agreement. Sustainable development goals are there, but the concretization requires a lot of calcium with respect to making cement, and then you require a lot of raw material in the form of rocks, that is metal, and then sand, that also comes as a natural resource. Then all these things put together, we are overburdening the planet Earth. That's another important issue. And with the concretization, the percolation of recharge of aquifer is not happening. So this is most important issue. Now, in that scenario, all the urban areas of India, I have made a very, what should I say, comprehensive study about it, are dependent on drinking water only on the rivers. Where the aquifers are gone, where the surface water has gone, and nobody wants to speak about it. And these rivers are also polluted. When Yamuna was a sewage, just because of the COVID, it became clear in less than a month's time. And similarly, in Madhya Pradesh situation, every other urban city is dependent on drinking water on Narmada. For only indoor now people are thinking about phase 4 of drinking water, taking from Narmada. And for Bhopal, we are entering into phase 2. So what I mean to say is that unless we plan water management and then, what should I say, air pollution management, all the urban areas don't have any water of their own. We are spoiling our air. So, and then second thing, green lungs are taken out because of this smart city development. I have gone through the total document of smart cities from the urban central ministry. It doesn't say anything about the water management. So without water, considering the water requirement of the densification projects, basically smart city is a densification. You acquire 1 hectare of land and ask the people that are more than 100 hectares to live in that area, because you are going to build their skyscrapers around. So on a 1 hectare land, how 100 multiplied people can have water, drinking water, air and other things. That's another important issue. Now, one more important issue I would like to bring in here. I was DFO Chambal way back in 2000, year 2000. So that time there was a project to take the water from Chambal, that is nearby Morena, to Agra. So Agra doesn't have its own drinking water. Now the Gwalior demands drinking water. Similarly, there is a big fight for the water in Son River from Riva and Singrauli. So one has to understand the scenario. मतलब नदियों कोई जो है कल्पतरु नहीं है, जितना चाहे वो पानी आपके लिए निकालता रहे, उगालता रहे. So we should understand about it. Another important issue in urban areas, of course, अभी स्वच्छ भारत अभियान से थोड़ा सा sensitization आई है, but still liquid and solid waste management, civic authorities, I don't know, a certain particular like people, indoor civic authority works best. That's what we is being told, and then results are coming out. But still, majority of the urban civic bodies does not have any solid and liquid management issues with them. I am struggling myself in my colony to segregate both solid and what should I say, degradable waste. But once it goes to the gets out of my house, then it gets dumped together. People are not sensitized about this issue. Another important issue, whatever the water bodies are available in and around, they have become basically, they have become storage tanks of all the slough that we take out. Another important issue. Then I think I have covered every issue, but one thing I would like to say at the end. The COVID, yes, COVID is to happen. ये तो होना ही था. प्यार तो होना ही था. ऐसा COVID तो होना ही था. For last 5 years, we are seeing so many signals from the nature. You cannot misuse and disuse the planet and still expect that we want everything for us. human Homo sapien is only one species among the all other species on this earth. Today, earth only can produce only for 7 months with a burdening population of the Homo sapiens. It is the total biomass put together. The total biomass by Homo sapiens and their domesticated animals account for almost 70% of the biomass of the life on the earth. It cannot happen. Recently, there are so many WhatsApp creative jokes around, cartoon satires around. We have covered the oceans with the plastic, and then we have to now cover ourselves with plastic. This is the irony. Unless our development is sustainable with respect to ecological perspective, we are not going, nothing else can happen for this planet. And second thing, most important issue, swine flu took place in Sweden. I may be giving the name of the country wrongly, 100 years back, but that time it was not pandemic the entire globe. Now we have provided a carrier in the name of aircrafts. I'm not blaming aircraft, but COVID has, in all probability, must be knowing now this particular human burden has increased, so he does have a good host around. So with the help of the carrier, air carriers, it spread out all over the world. Yes. So life is not so simple. Everybody has to understand, especially urban people, because what we breathe air, what we drink water, and what we eat, and what we need with respect to preventing the pandemics, and then what we want if attacked with the pandemics, again medicine comes there. Entire world is dependent on Indian herbal immunity medicines. Our kitchens are very well developed. We have so many spices into it. No other part of the world does have so many spices and other condiments which develop your immune system. So my sincere request to all the panelists and audience is to seriously think about at the ecosystem level. Our ecological capital is more important to sustain, to have a sustained development. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. You have raised very good points about how our citizens should be involved, how policymakers should think about environment when they're planning and implementing programs and schemes. Now, I think Mr. Abhilash Khandekar has also joined us. I would like Mr. Khandekar to please pitch in and take over. Mr. Khandekar.
Thank you, Abhishek. I'm really sorry to have joined late. I was under the impression, despite all the mails and messages from you, but I'm extremely sorry. I'm extremely sorry. So, how are you, Professor Harini?
Very well, thank you.
Very well. So, Abhishek, I would like to know if you have spoken to Murthy Saab. So I would like to ask him a question and then start, take on from him.
So maybe I think what I will suggest, please go to other speakers first, and then we'll in the second round, you can start.
Okay, so now whom do I go to?
I would request Ms. Pratna Borak from Clean Air Asia because we have been talking about urban issues and how this environment has affected, and that how COVID has improved air quality of Indian cities. So Ms. Bora, I would like to know from you, because Abhilash sir will take over, but I would like one question. The situation in Delhi has improved. What we call improved, it is not actually very good. The levels we have reached, it is still bad, but we are calling them that the pollution level is fine. Because when we talk about the PM 2.5 level at 150 in Paris or London, that is an emergency situation. But in India 250 is okay. So I would like to know from you how we are going to address the problem of air pollution among this pandemic and in post-COVID world, especially, Ms. Bora.
Thank you, Abhishek, and it's really good to be part of this discussion because I always look for an opportunity to talk about air in another forum, and it's like mainstreaming air into biodiversity. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us at Clean Air Asia to to bring in the dialogue of air within the urban context and especially within the biodiversity context. So to answer your question, I actually want to approach it in a different manner. I think I'll try to talk about. The previous speakers have spoken about challenges and the issues that arise when you talk about, when you talk about addressing the environmental issues in the urban development context. And fortunately or unfortunately, I happen to be someone who also comes from a sector specific background as well as a practitioner background. So we work very closely with also the government, so we understand both sides of the story. And some of the things that come up is very 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 pertinent questions were asked today, and I think maybe there are certain approaches which would help us answer those questions, and probably I'd like to look at it from that perspective. So I think if you look back and the last the last 3 months, I think one of the things that has been a very much part of the social media campaign and everybody's photographic photographic representation in whether it's Facebook or is the question of blue skies. So I think one of the best things that has happened to us, I mean good things that has happened to us under this lockdown situation, is that we have realized that we can have blue skies and what blue skies look like. So for many of us who lived in Delhi who hadn't seen blue skies, actually saw blue skies. So I think that is something that we need to start with, that there is a possibility, and okay, not the ideal situation, but this kind of a possibility is there. And Clean Air Asia did a study in Delhi which looked at the lockdown period, and we found that there were days like the 28th of March 2020 where the air quality index was below 50, which is something that in an Indian context was considered not achievable. And I think that is a very interesting trend, because this was something that was said that as far as India is concerned, we are too dusty. Our levels of our pollution levels are already the threshold is higher than the international level, so we cannot get anything below 60. So the national air quality standards actually put 60 as the standard for cities, and we actually reached a level like 35 on the 28th of March. Of course, it was a total lockdown situation, and if you compare it to March 28, 2019, it was over 180. So you can see the difference that happened because in a lockdown situation. So so my question is, like, bringing back to the topic, why do we need biodiversity in urban spaces, and how does it actually contribute to clean air? So if you look at, because I come from an air quality background, I'd like to approach this from the air pollution background. And if you look at just the geographical diversity within the city itself, I mean, if we study the trends of air quality in different locations in Delhi, you would see Lutyens is always about 50% better than an Anand Vihar. And we need to question ourselves that why is it that we have not discussed the whole green cover in that area, which has been protecting us better than in another area. So I think the whole Biodiversity Connect comes in there, and there are not enough studies which show the link. I mean, of course, we know that it's an understanding. We grow up with, at least our generation has grown up with thinking that, greening and plants and clean air and blue skies, right? But I think with the new generation, it's very important to bring up scientific assessments which look at things like this, which show that green cover is very important, and that's probably one issue that needs to be discussed in much more detail. The second area is that within the clean air action plans that have been mandated for 128 cities by the government under the National Clean Air Program, there is a very important component which talks about greening of cities as an air pollution mitigation measure. Now, I think it's very important to understand biodiversity in that context, because I think the introduction of what kind of trees is going to be very important, and we need the scientific inputs of biodiversity experts to come in this particular area, because that would give us the right kind of species. Now, let me tell you why we need the right kind of species. Now, for instance, if you look at it from a pollution perspective, there was this whole issue of acidification, which we discussed and in the 70s, and fortunately, of course, acidification reduced. But you have key air pollutants which are rising, and Keaji mentioned about the whole issue of transport and how we cannot actually go without transport. So I think, but we need to understand that vehicular emissions has a very, very strong component in air pollution, and that is nitrogen, oxides of nitrogen. Now, oxides of nitrogen nitrogen by itself is very beneficial if you look at it from a plant or a biodiversity perspective, but the moment it exceeds the levels, then what happens is that there are certain plants which would thrive in exceeding levels of nitrogen, and that can create a complication. So I think it's very important to understand how do we balance the right kind of biodiversity when we're looking at an urban space. And I think this is the discussion that needs to come in terms of urban planning structures, because we are talking a lot about, improving biodiversity and integrating biodiversity, but we're not talking to specialists to discuss about, key issues like invasive species, wrong species, and how it can actually do more harm than good. And I think that's another area that we really need to talk about and, look at how we can address this as an issue. The third area that I really want to talk about is something that we've been discussing in a COVID situation. And one of the areas that we're really talking about is the issue of mental health. And I think all of us being at home, youngsters being at home, I think the whole issue of depression, mental health, and has become a topic of discussion. Overrated, underrated, I don't know, but it is definitely going to be a situation that we'll have to deal with the new norms of social distancing and the new norms of not being able to adjust. And we all know that, we have this whole saying that we run away to nature for a good feeling. And I think all of us have this ideal holiday in the hills which we look forward to. And I think there are scientific studies which do prove that that nature does have a say in terms of how it balances your mental health. So there are concepts which have been started by very 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 prominent environmentalists like Richard Liu, who started the concept of nature deficit disorder for children, which actually creates this whole tendency of reclusiveness, or kind of I mean, even if you look at it from a practical perspective, reducing screen time vis-a-vis spending time in nature, I think it is already looking at improvements in physical health as well as mental health. So I think nature deficit disorder, biophilia, these are terminologies that are coming up today, which talk about, as I said, traditionally for us nature was a go-to when it came to fun, but I think now we have technical terminologies, and that is one area where probably the urban debate needs to strengthen its discussion and also bring in sector specialists so that we can think about improving not just air quality but improving the whole livability of an individual. I think ultimately air quality, water is what it's about, creating a good livable environment for us and for our children and for the young who we are going to we're basically leaving the environment for. So I think these are some of the areas that I think we really need to start thinking about. And I think when we talk about air quality, I think we really need to discuss it from the perspective of so many different sectors, like Keaji said in the beginning, that it's environment. And I think sometimes we get into our small group sectors and we just get into, very, very specifics. And that is where probably, I think we need more integrated debate. And I think this is a great start. And I appreciate that Urban Update invited me to this discussion. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. Abhilash, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you, Ms. Bora, for raising pertinent issues. But I also would like to go slightly outside Delhi, because when pollution comes to the cities, we invariably talk only about Delhi. But like the Central Pollution Control Board had drawn up a list of large number of cities. So Bangalore is also polluted, Mumbai is also polluted, Pune is also polluted, Indore is also polluted, Kanpur is also polluted. So I'm not asking you a question about district, I would like to go to Harini after that. And we all know Harini has written a beautiful book on these cities and canopy trees in Indian cities, and I must compliment her for that. But there was an issue of biodiversity, and we expected Mr. Murthy, who is the member secretary of the Madhya Pradesh Biodiversity Board, to also chip in when the questions about biodiversity in urban areas come up, because in 2002 the Biodiversity Act came into force, and by 2003 onwards people started knowing the importance of biodiversity as far as legal issues are concerned. So I would first like to show those who may not have seen this beautiful little book of Professor Harini Nagendra. If it is being seen, you can see these cities and canopies. Can you see, Harini, this little book I have reviewed for Urban Update, and the editor is sitting here, Mr. Abhishek Pandey. So I would like to thank him for carrying that. So I would also request Murthy Saab to have a copy of this book, because it talks about all the common trees that we find in cities. But my point and my question to Harini is that increasingly, because of smart city, because of metros, because of various urbanization programs and things like that, the Indian Institute of Science brought out some studies in which also showed even C-grade cities, C category cities like Bhopal and other places, there is a massive cut in the trees, and the canopies are going away. So your book has slightly touched upon that while dealing with large number of wood species, from people to jamun to neem to everything. So I would like to ask you, how do you see the urban scenario vis-a-vis trees and biodiversity?
So there is thanks first of all. I think it's a pleasure to be here and to share. I think the idea of doing cities and canopies for us, and thank you for bringing that up, was that I think we need, as academics or as people doing research on biodiversity, and as I think Kea and Prarthana said this very well, that we need to engage with people beyond just speaking into our silos. So it was an attempt to reach beyond, our own very specific things that we are doing, and trying to talk about how we can get people who are normally, let's say, tree blind or don't pay attention to the environment to come in. So I think it's the kind of questions also I'm seeing from the audience, I think, are interested in these kinds of practical questions. So we had a little bit of reflection on this. I think we had done so we've done a lot of different studies in Bangalore and in different cities across India. But the one study that attracted the greatest amount of interest actually brings together a number of the issues along with Mr. Murthy that Ms. Acharya and Ms. Pratna have been highlighting today. So, which is essentially air and health. I think the one thing is, people often think that cities are not the place for nature. Trees you can plant outside, and you can go to mountains to escape from the city. But in the city, you need your roads and your infrastructure. How do you break that? One of the biggest hooks that we found to help people understand why you need nature in a city, or trees in a city, or healthy water systems in a city, is the impact it has on your health, and mental health and physical health. And one of the clear aspects that is there is getting access to clean water and clean air, and these are basic rights. I think as human beings, when any country, we should be able to demand our basic rights. In addition to roti kapda makan, it has to be clean air and clean water and access to good sanitation. Now nature plays a huge role here, because what we did so this study, that to come back to, I had worked with undergraduate students in 2006-07, and they came up with this idea of doing a study of roads across Bangalore. So we took the same sets of roads with the same traffic on the same day, except we measured pollution during the time on the stretch of road with trees and on another stretch of road without trees. And we saw dramatic differences. Suspended particulate matter, this kind of soot that you see in the air, it reduces by as much as 75% just by having trees. NOx, the various nitrous oxides, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, all of this is reduced substantially locally in that local area by having trees. Ambient air temperature, the temperature at about your nose level, reduces by 3.5 to 5 degrees, which we all know. But asphalt, road tar temperature, the surface temperature of the road, if you measure using an infrared thermometer, will reduce by as much as 23 to 25 degrees centigrade. Which means instead of walking on a road that is 65 degrees centigrade, baking hot, you will be walking on or standing on the side of the road on a relatively comfortable 35 degrees. Why is that important? It's important because roads determine the street culture or the life of a city. We've moved to cities where instead of thinking of them as streets with street life, we think of them as roads with traffic, and traffic goes from point A to point B. We pay zero attention to the quality of the road or the experience on that road. Who still experiences life on those roads which used to be streets? The street vendors, the people who buy from them, who are typically garment shop workers or security guards, or all people who buy something on a daily basis, or the people who are walking, the people who are using buses, the people who are cycling, which means the poorest in the city. And unless we can get that fixed, because there's a huge equity component of these are the people who worst get, affected by this. If we want to make our cities transition away, there was a lot of, I see questions here about how can we transition and what are the practical aspects. And I think multiple people said that it has to be a two-way interaction between the government doing something and between communities pushing for the government or civic society pushing the government to do something. But for that transition, you can say that public transport, the government needs to provide us public transport. But for people to take that public transport, it has to be faster than private transport. It has to have last mile connectivity. Last mile connectivity, the best connectivity is either your legs or a cycle. And that will not work unless you have that tree cover set up. So there is this huge interaction between cities and health. On the mental health front also, I think we're seeing a lot. We've talked to so many people that say that, the cities are hugely important for your mental health. The third thing that is extremely important that we see is in terms of nature, making people feel that they are part of the city. Now, the other really, if you think of Indian cities, they're growing extremely fast and they're cities that are full of migrants. Why does a migrant care about that city? When does this migrant take a step to civic action for the city? What we find is rule of thumb varying from, it's about 5 to 7 years and you're in the city that you start feeling that the city is yours. And after doing a lot of in-depth interviews, we find nature plays a major role. If you have a restored lake, a restored river, a small urban park, a place that is green, that's when you start thinking that the city is your city. And otherwise, what keeps happening is you move from one place to another. A mall is not going to make you feel this place is your city. A gym where you go for exercise is not going to make you feel that there's civic action here. So unless you get away from what we're calling tree blindness or environmental blindness and see that your city has beautiful spots of nature, you will not care about your city and act on it. And I think if they don't act, if people don't act and pressurize the government to act, then all of these are just debates on science and theory in the air. So I'll stop here, but I'm happy to take further questions.
You are muted, sir.
Called the nature.
What are we having? Is it a question and answer amongst the panelists right now, Abhishek?
Yeah, Mr. Abhilash Khandekar will ask some questions and then we'll take some questions from the audience also. Mr. Khandekar, you are muted, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yes, right.
Okay. So, I was just trying to take this discussion further because Harini said that the citizens have a role in, trying to relate with the natural resources and whether it is wetland, whether it is trees, whether it is parks. But there my question was that increasingly the cities and the city managers, whether it is municipal commissioners and others, they are not in a position to do anything else than construction. So plantation of trees or creating new gardens is unfortunately not the agenda of the city managers, the municipal commissioners and others. This is what Prarthana also said in connection with the air quality, and Harini also said about this thing. Because when we started a lake conservation movement in Indore, the idea was that we should create a carbon sink in a city like Indore, which is the commercial capital of Madhya Pradesh. And out of 11 or 13 good sprawling wetlands or lakes or jheels, only 3 or 4 were left, and everything was being taken over by the municipal commissioners, the municipalities, and the people and encroachers. So the question is, when this Biodiversity Act has come into play now, it is about more than 17 years. So I would like a question, and I would like to bring Mr. Murthy also into discussion, asking him, is the Biodiversity Act also applicable, and are you forcing the municipalities and the city managers all over Madhya Pradesh, or for that matter, this Biodiversity Act is now the authority is there in Chennai, and most municipal commissioners whom I have spoken to, they said, no, our priority is cleaning the city, our priority is building bridges and looking after the drainage system. But fact remains that in Mumbai is 98% paved city. Everyone knows that, and therefore there are all floods and things like that. So the question quickly to Harini is, do you see any change in urban development pattern of the country? Or Prarthana can also reply to that. Because air quality and greenery and all these things are related. There is a scarcity of water also in all cities. So over to Harini.
I think that's a very important issue. And if you look at the climate change city action plans, we've been doing some analysis of them. If you look at the smart city action plans, and Mr. Murthy also said this, they don't pay any attention to nature in the city. Or if they do,
Precisely.
it is something like, let us plant so many trees, but that tree could be eucalyptus that you plant in large amounts. There is no idea of a healthy functioning ecosystem, its role in really playing an important role in this. There is, heat action plans across there are some really good heat action plans which have helped like in Ahmedabad and to save lives, but they focus on things like SMS alerts. How do you reduce the heat in the city to begin with? By restoring the water bodies and by planting more trees. That is not something anybody pays attention to. So we really need to get biodiversity and the idea of a healthy functioning ecosystem. Food forests, healthy rivers, good lakes, things that are not recreational. You don't want a situation where you have a lake that is supposedly restored, but you have a lot of theme parks and boating and all that. But you need the ecological services of that lake for the city, or the
Very
ecological
right.
services of the park for the city. That if we can
Sir,
figure out some way, then we should be, that is the way forward.
Yeah, Mr.
sir,
Murthy,
I
you
would
wanted
like
to
to
say
chip in
something?
here.
Please.
Yes, sir. I would like to chip in here. A Biodiversity Act was came into action from 2002. Act enacted by Parliament, but Biodiversity Authority, Biodiversity Act, and Biodiversity Boards has been to great extent are non-functional. First thing, and second thing, there is a very good system which the Biodiversity Act provides. That is biodiversity management committees, both at the rural level as well as the urban level. So with the urban level, there is one issue which I found out. Let me say that Delhi will have one biodiversity management committee for how much population? The population is more than 2.5 crores. You put everything greater Delhi together. So that is not going to solve the purpose. I brought in an amendment in Madhya Pradesh for at least making one biodiversity management committee for one ward. Even the ward will have more than 70,000 people, but still that is ultra, what should I say, with respect to the constitutional provision of the Biodiversity Act, because it says one local body will have one biodiversity management committee. One thing, let us leave that legal part for the time being, but still biodiversity management committees are to come into picture. And only one public litigation in NGT recently in 2016 by name Chandrabal has to some extent ignited entire country with respect to formation of biodiversity management committees, but to great extent that they are still on paper. With the COVID situation now, physical meeting cannot happen, but certainly biodiversity management committee will be a bigger solution to attend the holistic part of human welfare, and then total biodiversity attendance that can happen through these channels. I would like to say, unless these institutions are activated and a sensitization at the civic body authority level as well as the political level happens, then it's a big question. I request these institutions like presently we are participating here, such institutions take a lead in collaboration with the biodiversity boards in their respective states, and then that can happen in a better way, because it is a crisis situation.
Thank you, sir.
You will be able to convince
Thank you,
everybody
sir.
with the COVID situation, and then things can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. I would like to ask Kia Acharya, what is her experience and how does she see both things, that biodiversity as well as urban governance? Because that also concerns the human health of the citizens, the clean water, clean air, and also climate issues. Kia?
Mr. Khandekar, I've been writing for actually it's over 25 years. I would like to
I
say
know.
that it's not working. Mr. Murthy has been speaking of this NBSAP, National Biodiversity. We sat for the government of India way around in 2002, I think it was, with Kalpabriksh and Ashish Kothari. There's an entire chart of things that can, of delineation of what is biodiversity in each state of India. Nothing's been done about it. What do you do when there's no political will? He's talking about NVSAP in Madhya Pradesh. What do you do about the mining that's going on right now? What do you do about the mining that's in Chhattisgarh? You know, our last lands, natural lands, are now under incredible government push to set up with weakened environmental impact. It never worked anyway. I think the EIA is just a superfluous, if you ask me. So I don't know what to say except to tell you all that each and every one of us now have to push our governments. We've got an argument that this is what happens if you let this be. We have to push all of us together, put in all our expertise. The knowledge is already there. You don't need to write any more books. It's there. We now need to push. And as a journalist, okay, right now we have 750. When I started this association, we had about less than 100. We've got more than 750 journalists from around the country. Just help. We are there to give you the dissemination you need. We now need to push. It's not happening. I haven't seen it. I might say a little here and there, okay? If somebody spoke about thermal, my goodness, the whole world is now pushing against fossil fuel. We have coal. We're not going to get rid of coal. We've got coal. We've got a political system that wants the coal, okay? So, but I get told the argument that India is very good in renewable energy right now. Maybe. So let's push for that. You know, so I don't know what to say. After 30 years, I am now hitting the roof.
No, you are not. No journalist does that. I have also been around for the last so many years, and we can't give up hopes. But fact remains that what you said is right. This Modi government is, while from one hand it is pushing green energy, trying to set up solar power plants, which was set up or inaugurated only 15 days ago by the Prime Minister in Madhya Pradesh, part of Madhya Pradesh. And there are many other solar, equipment. Airports are being energized through solar energies. And on the other hand, also what you said is right. The coal excavation and coal mining is unabated, and we see what has happened in Assam Forest Department has served a notice and has actually penalized the Coal India Limited, but the issue is not getting resolved. So coming back to urban issues and biodiversity, I would like to ask Prarthana once again that while you said about what's the air quality in Delhi, is there a solution? Some people are already talking about learning from the COVID experience. They are talking about some kind of a lockout each year on a given date, say 1st March to 31st March, or maybe full month of April. Like in Delhi, this odd even experiment, I was living in Delhi, it was experimented by Kejriwal government. Some people say it had its own impact. Some people say it failed and it was never repeated. So what is the solution that one can think of bringing down the air pollution levels?
So thank you, Abhilash.
Other than Delhi also, I mean, you should also talk about other cities if you can.
So
just to give a...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as I said that, we're not just working in Delhi, we're working in many of the two-tier cities. And in fact, we started our work in the two-tier cities because we talked about them from the perspective of already having clean air. So what I want to discuss, what I want to say is that no single solution is a solution. And as far as air quality is concerned, I think, just by greening or just by introducing odd and even, or just by, a sectoral intervention, the air is not going to, become clean overnight. And it's actually, if you look at a country like India, as far as air quality management is concerned, the capacity is very, very, I think it's about 5%. If you look at it, there's a single pollution control board, which has a single person who's looking at water, air, land pollution. And, and so I think one of the issues that is coming up, even in the context of other discussions, is the fact that, the capacity needs to be enhanced as far as air quality is concerned. And if you look at countries like the US, there are people in a particular city, as the numbers are such that they're only working with air quality, and that could be equal to the numbers for the entire country like ours, as far as air quality management is concerned. So I think air quality management is very complex, and it's not about just looking at an odd and even day or just by planting trees. And there was a question here which says that can you reduce the air pollution by planting trees? So yeah, it's very difficult for me to give you a solution, because I think one of the things that as a country we need to approach this is that every city would have a different solution, because it depends on what the source of pollution is. So for instance, if vehicular emissions is an issue in a particular city, or road dust is an issue in a particular city, so the problem is approached from that. But what our problem is as far as air pollution is concerned is that we may have data for Delhi, which is why it is always in the news in terms of where the air pollution levels are. But as far as other cities are concerned, I mean, Bangalore, yes, Bangalore is also a city which has enough data to have a specific sector specific action. But the whole concept of air quality management is having data on pollution, that having data on the source, so you can identify the source, having data on the kind of pollutants and the mix of the pollutants. And only when you have all the scientific data can you address the issue. And the addressing of the issue goes beyond the air quality space. It goes into waste management, because you have to prevent burning. It goes into road dust, so you have to talk to the construction industry. It goes into greening, so it goes into the biodiversity and the greening sector. So there are multiple mitigation activities. So as Kiaji said, that it's all out there. We have the policies, but then say for instance at a city level, the departments don't talk to each other. There is no mechanism to kind of support that whole process of mitigation. So I think what is probably required as far as air quality is concerned is you do need some coordination on the ground, because the Pollution Control Board, which is the primary organization dealing with air pollution, is a regulatory body. It's not an enforcement body, it's a regulatory body. So similar, if you look at the municipal, if you look at the Clean Air Action Plans, there are policy recommendations, there are regulatory recommendations, and there are implementation recommendations. And the implementation recommendations fall within a city's purview, which is where the urban space is. But if it is an industry emissions issue, then it is beyond the city purview. So I think there are complications like this. And if you're discussing air quality, I think we are of course in a better stage than we were 5 years back, when nobody was talking about air quality. But today we are talking about air quality in the context of smaller cities. I started with Delhi, but you asked me to talk about other cities, right? So we have so many cities. So I think these are issues that I think we need to be addressed. And there is, and I think one of the things that we need to really look at is how do we track progress. I mean, we work very closely very closely with the Chinese government, and probably that is one example that has always been brought up in terms of how China addressed air pollution. China addressed air pollution because it tracked progress. That how we are placed into how they were placed in 2020 vis-a-vis 2019, and there was penalties for not reaching certain targets. So now within the NCAP, for instance, I'll tell you what is the biggest challenge. The NCAP says that the non-attainment cities, the 122 non-attainment cities, need to reduce air pollution by 30 to 40% by 2024. The baseline year is to 2017, but many cities don't even know what data to use for 2017. Many of the cities don't even have baseline data. So how do you track the progress and get to that level? So I think it's about how you set your goals and how you kind of address it. And we're still dealing with
that is perfectly all right, Prarthana. That is perfectly all right what you said. So can I take some questions from the audience, Abhishek? So here is Gunjan Kumar Jain. He is asking how to go ahead with solution. That is what Kia also said. A lot of knowledge is around. Everyone knows what is to be done, but nothing is being done. So the question from Gunjan is how a person or an organization keen to do something towards urban environment and biodiversity should move ahead. What kind of species to plant for biodiversity? As the question was raised by Ms. Prarthana, creating sustainable native tree, urban forest, etc. So can Harini give the reply to this? What kind of species to be planted in cities?
I think one thing is, I mean, as a general principle, there are no broad rules. What will apply for Delhi will not apply for Bangalore, for Hyderabad, or for Mumbai. So we need to think of what is suitable to the local context. But I also think this is where civic society and naturalists can play a major role. One thing we are doing now at Azim Premji University, we're working on is a booklet, because many people come and ask us, what should I plant in Bangalore? Now, what should you plant depends. Are you planting at the side of a lake or on a wetland? Then don't plant trees. You know? Or if you're planting on a grassland, maybe don't plant trees. If you're planting on the side of the road, then don't plant something that is going to dig up the plumbing or interfere in the electricity. So certain kinds of principles, I think broad, not just what do you plant in which city, where do you plant it and what are the long-term benefits. But one broad, I know we are running out of time. One broad pitch I want to make is, I think we are so cramped for space in cities. We have to plant multifunctional trees, which is an old Indian practice. No? Something that is fruiting, something that provides maybe some grass or leaves, leaves for cows to eat. Something that gives,
or maybe flowers for pollination.
Flowers for pollination. Something that is multifunctional. We can't think of only ornamental trees. And
so there is one important question coming up, and I would like it to be directed to Kia, because she is most experienced journalist. She has seen everything around. So the question is about the whole idea of, I don't know who has sent it, and anonymous attendee. The whole idea of building smart cities has been reduced to it being technologically advanced, and there is very less emphasis on citizen sensitization regarding the ecosystem services that the urban natural resources provide. How can we ensure efficient and cooperative citizen engagement? Also, how can civic societies be made more responsible to lead a concerted effort to save our cities?
Okay. Yeah. I assume this is a young participant asking that question. All right. Yes, there has been a lot of criticism amongst those in the know already that the smart cities are, to tell you the truth, really not smart at all. Okay, they haven't looked at anything else except being connected through Wi-Fi and having great concrete infrastructure, etc., which has already been spoken of. Okay, it hasn't looked at the basics of how to sustain that place. Okay, so having said that, I think for us, we are on our way out. Okay, we've finished with bringing this out. It's up to the next generation now to develop leaders in your fields. Okay, look at read more, go to institutes, search through the internet. Maybe that's one blessing of smart cities. Search through the internet to find who you should be contacting to talk about how I can push forward as far as water conservation, as far as Harini's trees are concerned, as far as biodiversity is concerned, and bring forward leaders, develop them. Don't keep quiet. Don't keep quiet. Stand up.
Very good. So I would like to conclude. We are running out of time. So I would like to say that standing up in Bhopal Smart City, the planning at the planning stage, it was decided by the SIA agency, as we all know, that 17% of green cover in the newly erected smart city. But the smart city builders are just not listening to that, and we had to move to NGT to get an order, stay order on the smart city construction. We spoke to the chief secretary, took him around the new smart city, and he was amazed to see, he was rather shocked to see that what kind of construction was going on. So here is the problem, that a chief secretary, sitting chief secretary, he keeps signing on the file, but he doesn't know really what is happening within the capital city. So what to talk about the other cities? So what you said, Kia, is right, that we moved the NGT, but the fact remains that in every city you will find only a handful of people who are ready to fight out, but they would like to take everything in stride. They would like to, I mean, like in Delhi, how many people are raising the issue about dust and the road pollution? How many people are talking about the traffic issues which are there in Bangalore? Every newspaper keeps doing all these things. Narayan Murthy also said. There are problems, there are solutions, there are some good people, there are some not so good people. So the fact remains that what happened in RA Forest in Mumbai, like that, the pressure group has to be created in every city, and all those audience who are here, youngsters, they should try to form groups and try to form a pressure group. My little organization, the Nature Volunteers, the line is that we are a pressure group of environmentally restless people, and therefore we are trying to talk to bureaucrats, we are trying to talk to the politicians and put some pressure. Because I am a journalist, I can have access to number of top bureaucrats and policymakers. But the fact remains that what can an individual citizen do? So I think Kia has already suggested that, and there is last final two-liners from Harini and Prarthana, if you have to say something about the urban issues and the biodiversity and the future and the days to come. What kind of scenario do we visualize? Something positive to end the show with.
Yeah, I think COVID is giving us a time to reflect. At least that this is not the world that we see it. You know, before, to me, you would have artist pictures painting a city with bird song and with clear skies. We don't need those artist pictures. We're seeing them for a brief few weeks. Can we use that to rekindle our imagination and say that this is the world that we want for the future before we jump back into business as usual? And can we use this time for imagination?
Good, thank you. Prarthana?
So I think I started with this and I'll end with it. I think COVID has made us realize what clean air, blue skies, and birds chirping outside our window is.
And beautiful rivers.
Yeah. So I think that is a great thing, and I hope what I'd like to say is that I think our generation grew up seeing that, but I think it's great to see the younger generation also talking about it. So I think that's really a positive, and I hope that it also leads to sustainable lifestyles and understanding of nature and feeling that nature is you're part of nature.
Thank you. Mr. Murthy?
COVID has
Murthy is a
brought down
tiger
the
expert, by
human
the
being
way.
to its own level, sir. Earlier we were flying very high.
Yeah.
Now the human being has been grounded because of COVID. The rest of the nature is doing.
So nature does not want human interference, that we all know, but still once this COVID and lockdowns are lifted, I think people will be back to the same thing. I don't know.
Its own work.
It won't work. So Kia, final word from you?
To the younger generation especially, as I'm saying,
Yeah.
keep questioning. Yes, I've been talking to...
So one has to realize this
of-
change in every aspect of a Homo sapien with respect to his behavior, with respect to his relations, with respect to his aspiration. This globe is threatening your life. It's slightly alert about everything. Thank you.
Sorry, Kia. Please carry
Yeah, no, to the younger generation especially, I've been speaking to them and I find the questions are there. They just don't know how to go about it. I am saying you stand up, okay? I will keep saying. Do not take it for granted just because your elders are doing X, that it's correct. More than 90% of the time, as we can already see from the mismanagement in this country, it's not there. So stand up and do your bit. And I need to say, okay, we had a whole group of journalists. Anybody got anything for dissemination? I am there to help, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank my hosts. I enjoyed this session. Thank you very much. The Institute of Local Self-Government, Abhishek, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So it's time to leave, and all good things have come to an end. Thank you, Professor Harini. Thank you, Prarthana. Thank you, Murthy Saab. And thank you, audience, for patiently listening to all the panelists. Thank you very much for joining this show.
Thank you, everyone.
All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.